Hello gamers, it's Magehammer, and welcome to a Magehammer's Musings, episode 2. Today, if you couldn't figure it out, I'm going to be talking about Warhammer 40,000. Let's go all the way back. I'm 15 years old. I've already been playing Dungeons & Dragons, interested in it, have read some articles in Dragon Magazine that Dungeons & Dragons came out of a game called Chainmail. Now, Chainmail was a miniatures game that Gary Gygax worked on, and it was his home game, and then that was, I believe, the reason he started TSR, Tactical Studies Rules Game Company, was to publish Chainmail. And then, of course, the game that really put him on the map was Dungeons & Dragons. So, Chainmail was a game that I didn't really have around my neighborhood. I didn't really get to play it that much. But then enter Bandcamp. You know, we all love Bandcamp. So I went to Bandcamp, and there was a guy that was a year older than me, and he knew that I was into Dungeons & Dragons, and he's like, hey, I brought Chainmail. Do you want to play in our downtime? I was like, yeah, absolutely. That'd be awesome. So went into his dorm room, the dorm room when we were staying at Bandcamp. Set up on top of the dresser of the dorm room was a, I think it was like a river with a bridge over it. Not too much other terrain. Miniatures on each side. Monsters against humans, I believe. He goes, and he explained to me how to play the game. It involved rolling lots of D6s, if I remember correctly. I don't remember too much else about it, but I had always wanted to play it, and I was hooked on miniature war games. I mean, I'd heard about it, I wanted to play it, seen photos in Dragon Magazine, whatever, or seen people talk about it. And remember, this is before the internet, so there was no battle reports or anything along those lines. So I played Chainmail, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then, well, a couple years down the road, I bought miniatures for Dungeons & Dragons, and I tried to find Chainmail. I couldn't really find it. Really, I don't know if they were publishing it, and it just didn't happen. But then TSR published Battle System. It was, they had cardboard chits, they had a rule book. I think I still have it around here somewhere in the basement. And I was like, oh, a war game. And I believe it used D10s, and I tried setting it up, and I tried playing it. It just didn't have the same kind of allure that Chainmail had for me. I did attempt to play another miniatures game, and to be honest, I can't remember. I think I was using like mass combat rules maybe out of the D&D basic, expert, and so on rules maybe. And I had some miniatures. Really wasn't good at it. Even back then, I wasn't into painting miniatures, but I did manage to paint a halfling fighter, shield, chainmail, and a sword. And I have him buried away because I think he's made out of pewter, which is half lead. And then there's this big thing like in mid 80s or end of the 80s where, oh no, there's lead, and kids are playing with them, and then they're eating chips and getting lead in their system. So it's a toxic thing, so I put him away, but I think I have him somewhere around here. Very first miniature I painted, and for years, decades, that was the only miniature I had painted. So, I had heard of Warhammer Fantasy Battles. I bought Warhammer Fantasy, a book, at, I believe, Spellbinders, is a game shop in Kent, Ohio. And I bought, and it was like an introduction, it was like a rule book, and I was fascinated by it, and I just was fascinated by the stats and the D6s, but I never got it to the table. Never really had anybody I could talk into playing it at that point, and it just didn't happen. But I still have that rule book as well. So then, and I always said, it's kind of funny because the guy that owns my local game store where I buy all my Warhammer stuff was a former student of mine, and I've known him for years, obviously, and he always makes fun of me every time I go in to buy miniatures, because he's like, oh, you know, because back when, you know, I always would say, you know what, I'd rather be playing games than painting miniatures. I don't, you know, I don't want to be wasting my time painting miniatures. I could be playing a game. That was my snobby kind of, you know, answer to that. So he makes fun of me this day, but anyway, but that was the point. I felt like I'm not good enough to paint. I don't want all the hassle of painting. I just want to play. I want to get miniatures to the table, you know, and I want to play. So I was actually very excited when 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons came out, or 3.0, and they were going to be miniatures focused. We kind of used miniatures in our D&D games over the years, but really it was mostly theater of mind mixed in with a few miniatures if there was a really difficult encounter that we needed to talk about or, you know, show on the table. But then the pre-painted minis, I was like, oh, wow, miniatures games, and I don't have to paint the miniatures. So I bought the chainmail. I bought some of the D&D miniatures. They came out with a D20 D&D miniatures game. They reissued chainmail. I got some of the miniatures for that. But pre-painted, I was like, great. That was always my main stumbling block to really getting into miniatures games, was I didn't want to paint my miniatures. So pre-painted minis was great. They weren't the best paint jobs, but I didn't care. They weren't, you know, metal blobs of what I was used to when I was younger. So those came out, and that changed everything. I was like, oh, I could try to play miniatures games. But the D20 miniatures game just didn't grab me, and then I tried the chainmail, then it didn't grab me, the new edition. But what did grab me was a skirmish game that I found on RPG Now. It's now Drive-Thru RPG. It was called Song of Blades and Heroes, and it was a skirmish game. And I was like, now I can use all these miniatures I bought for D&D, and I can actually play a war game. It's not going to be a large war game, but it'll be a skirmish game. It'll still be a war game, a miniatures game. And I played a lot of Song of Blades and Heroes. I played it solo because the activation system in Song of Blades and Heroes is really cool. You roll 3D. You activate a model. You can roll up to 3d6, and you get as many actions as those 3d6 dictate. So up to 3. However, if you fail two of those activations, you can do, let's say you rolled 3 of them, you get 1 activation, 2 failures, you get to activate your 1 mini, but then initiative passes to your opponent. I thought that was great, but that also was really good for solo play. And I would just make the decisions on either side, roll activations, and I played, and I finally started buying terrain, I started buying battle mats, and I was using pre-painted Dungeons & Dragons minis because it was a miniatures agnostic game, and it was simple, and it pretty much used a D6. Miniatures had 2 stats and then special abilities. It was a dream come true, and that really launched me into my miniatures world. And then I bought Flying Lead and anything Andrea came out with, or Ganesha Games, any miniatures game that they came out with, I bought. Flying Lead, Fear and Faith, which is, you know, supernatural horrors skirmish game, Power Legion, superheroes. Then they did Advanced Song of Blades and Heroes, bought that. And then after playing that a couple times, I decided, you know what, I just like the old basic Song of Blades and Heroes. So I played that for a while. Whenever I was in the mood for a miniatures game, I'd break it out and play it. Then, and I played that for years, solo or against my sons. And then January 2019, I saw on YouTube a Warhammer battle report by Play On Tabletop. Play On. 40K in 40 minutes. And I was like, ooh, those guys make this game look fun. And there was Warhammer 40K was in its 8th edition at that point. And I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. And then I kept watching all their videos. Then I started watching other battle reports. Then I started thinking, you know what? I think it's time. So I talked my son into playing it. We went on eBay, bought some pre-painted minis because obviously, you know, 40K minis that people had painted. He wanted orcs. I basically used some pre-painted Star Wars minis, and we got the free download the rules, and I tried out the game. But then after a while, I was like, I need to get my own miniatures. And so we bought him some pre-painted, and we bought me some pre-painted Necrons, bought him some pre-painted orcs. And we played several games, loved it. All those dice. As a gamer, you know, I love rolling dice, and few games let you roll as much dice as 40K does, and it's just so much fun. But then as we started getting into it, I started realizing that, you know what, it's a lot cheaper if I buy the kits and put them together myself and then paint them. And so with hat in hand, I went to my local game store, Infinite Realms, Girard, Ohio. Check it out on Facebook. Give them a shout out. And I said, okay, I'm getting into this. So they had some pre-assembled Necrons that I didn't have from eBay, and I bought them, and I got the paints, talked to the guys there about painting them up, painted them up, and frankly, I did a pretty good job. You know, there's a thing in Warhammer called Battle Ready, and I believe my Necrons are way beyond Battle Ready. I thought they were pretty good, and I was proud of them, I was happy about it. And I'm like, you know what, I can do this. So one thing led to another, and I painted up an entire Necron army, got Necrons, painted them up, learned that spray paint, Citadel spray paint, is my best friend for large amounts of minis. Because the Indominus box came out, I split it with my friend Surf Monkey, and he took the Space Marines and I took the Necrons. And so I put them together and I painted them. I bought some more Necrons from there, painted them up. Then I decided, you know what? I think it's time to get another army, just for a little bit of variety. On my son, he was already into orcs. He bought some orcs and put them together himself and painted them up. Then he started painting up, buying and painting up Astra Militarum just for some, you know, just for some variety. We had bought the starters, so we had some Space Marines laying around. We'd throw them in with the Astra Militarum. We didn't really paint those up. I kind of fudged those a little bit. Just kind of did some dry brushing and, you know, did their bases and threw on a wash, and we called it Battle Ready. It wouldn't pass at a tournament, but that's okay. We don't go to tournaments. Anyway, so we had Space Marines. He was Astra Militarum and Orcs. I was I am Necrons and Adeptus Mechanicus. And then I decided I want to get into Eldar too. So I bought like the Start Collecting box of Eldar and like another box of Eldar, put them together, painted them up, and it's just a small force. And I'm kind of waiting, because then by the time I was into the Eldar, the 9th edition was announced and was coming out. This is 9th edition, by the way. And I decided, I'm going to wait on the Eldar till their 9th edition codex comes out. Then I'm going to finish out this army. I pretty much only take up the Strike Force. If you don't know anything about Warhammer 40k, that's kind of like a medium-sized army. Small armies are Combat Patrol, medium-sized are Strike Force, and then goes Incursion and all the way up. But we find that for the amount of time we want to spend playing a game, Incursion kind of hits a sweet spot for us, 1.5 to 2 hours depending. And it's on as small as, you know, I bought battle mats. So we play on our battle mats. I bought terrain, buying terrains. I bought some terrain, I painted some terrain, other terrain I bought. I tried to buy as much terrain as I could that was not, that I didn't have to put together, I could take right out of the box, put down. So long story short, we went all in, and I love it. I love it, and it led to Age of Sigmar. We play Age of Sigmar now too. I bought some minis there, painted those up. I mean, some of those are in various states of painting, but I have enough to put out on the field. And frankly, it's just us anyway. We don't go to the shop to play. We pretty much play in my basement, and Surf Monkey doesn't care if they're not painted. My son doesn't care if it's not painted. So we just play and we have fun with the armies that we have. And I've pretty much realized a dream that I was able to play. Because for years, Warhammer to me was a game that I wasn't going to play, but I was always interested in. I read the novels. As soon as Gaunt's Ghosts came out, I bought it, I read it, and I loved it. And I loved that universe. And I read the novels for all that time that I was staying away from miniatures games. I read the novels, loved the lore, loved the world, and I see those advertisements at the end of the books, and I was like, I just can't do it. I can't paint these things, you know. And then, you know, 2 Januaries ago, finally gave in, and I'm glad I did. And I'm glad I played it at this point in my life. I kind of say it's my midlife crisis, but I didn't buy a Corvette. I buy Warhammer models, and frankly, it's probably getting, I mean, I don't, it's comparatively expensive. Maybe not that expensive, but it's getting there. Anyway, so I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did at this point in my life because I have my son that I have a regular play partner against. Surf Monkey plays. Now that the pandemic's over, we're getting together back once a month or so playing. We're playing Warhammer, so that's great because he's into it too. He's in all kinds of games as well, like I am. I have my son I can play, so I didn't have that before. It was hard to find somebody that would wanted to do that when I was younger. I also now married, 2 incomes. I'm in a place where it makes sense that if I want to spend a little extra money on a hobby, I can without being ridiculous, of course. I still have to be careful. But I think this wouldn't have had the same effect on me if I had played when I was younger. And this may be your experience as well. I don't know if any of you who are viewing this have had the same experience I have. Some of you, I know you started Warhammer when you were kids. I've watched a lot of videos and other people's testimonies on Warhammer and how they started and all that. So I just wanted to talk about Warhammer 40K and how it's pretty much transformed my life. I have a subscription to White Dwarf. I play Age of Sigmar. We're going to buy the new Kill Team when it comes out. I already have that pre-ordered with the game shop. And just today, actually, I went and I started a Space Marine army because I'm going to be making a Tome Keepers Space Marine Strike Force level army. And I went and bought the start of that today. And I'm pretty excited about putting those together. In fact, I'm putting together a Dreadnought after this video, a Redemptor Dreadnought. And I'm really looking forward to getting them to the table. I like everything there is to know about the Tome Keepers. The Tome Keepers are White Dwarf Magazine's own chapter. They build it up from the bottom up, and it's for the magazine. The magazine is, of course, about Warhammer 40K. It's published by Games Workshop, so it's official. And the Tome Keepers are all about writing in books and reading books, and books are their relics. So as an English teacher, that really resonated with me, and we got their transfers in the most recent White Dwarf, and that was really the impetus into getting it. Then I have I bought the Index Astartes White Dwarf issue that has all their background and lore, and I've decided I'm going to make a Space Marines army. So now, if you're counting, I have a Necrons army, I have a Adeptus Mechanicus army, I have a small Eldar army, and now I'm going to have a medium-sized Space Marine army, Tome Keepers. And so that has been consuming a lot of my hobby life, but I'm still playing games, going to play Tiny Dungeons & Dragons tomorrow night with my other group. We played Friday night Dungeons & Dragons on Google Meets, and playing Magic the Gathering Arena. And then Max and I have been teaching him Space Weirdos, and once he's comfortable with the game, I'm going to be posting another Space Weirdos playthrough, a miniatures game, skirmish game, because I love miniatures games. So that's a little bit of an update with me. I guess it's called Magehammer's Musings. I can ramble on about whatever I want, but I wanted this one to be focused mostly on Warhammer 40K and where I'm at with it, and how excited I am to be into the game and into the lore together, and how much fun and joy it's brought me over this past year and a half or so. So that was the Magehammer's Musings episode 2, Warhammer 40K. I'm sure eventually someday I'll be giving another video on Warhammer 40K. And who knows what my next Magehammer's Musings is going to be about, whenever the spirit moves me. But once again, I would love to thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. And I hope you enjoyed this. And tell me in the comments below what your experience with Warhammer 40K has been. And until the next time, this is Magehammer signing out. Thank you.